Her name was Debanhi Escobar Balsadua. She was 18 years old at the time of the events. She was the only daughter of Mario Escobar and Dolores Balsadua. She lived with her family in Monterrey, Nuevo León, Mexico. Debanhi was studying law at the Faculty of Law and Criminology at the Autonomous University of Nayarit, where she was in her third semester. In fact, she had taken her previous semesters virtually, and she was finally about to start attending in-person classes after 2 years of the pandemic. According to her friends and acquaintances from the university, Debanhi was cheerful, outgoing, charismatic, and fun. At the moment, there isn't much more to say about the victim's life. So, with this brief context, let's move on to the day of the events. First, let's look at what we assumed from the beginning, based on the little information that was available about the case. On April 8th of this year, 2022, Debanhi had planned to go out partying with some friends. At least that's what we know so far. Knowing that the situation in Mexico isn't easy, Mario, her father, spoke to her, as he usually did, reminding her to be careful and to keep these things in mind. Her mother, Dolores, before she left the house that night, even told her, "Don't go, sweetie, don't go out." Of course, they never imagined that on that very night they would end up leaving their daughter alone on some road in Monterrey. The first thing that became known in this case was that the plan for that night was to go to a quinta, which was supposed to be a party with her friends. Let's say that was the initial information when Debanhi disappeared. But something happened at that party. Later, the father would see, thanks to everything collected by the prosecutor's office, a video showing one of Debanhi's supposed friends grabbing her by the hair. They were fighting. Although he still did not fully comprehend the reasons behind exactly what was occurring at that time. And in fact, we are still more or less finding out what happened and why they were engaged in such a conflict, or what the father actually saw with his own eyes. The friends in question who accompanied her that night are named Sarai and Yvonne, and they had met through another person nicknamed Pato, Sarai's boyfriend, which led them to gradually start seeing each other more often. And to clarify, actually Yvonne didn't know Debanhi. She officially met her the same night they went out. Furthermore, Debanhi's previous friends pointed out that they actually didn't know much about these two people because they had only known each other for a very short time. In any case, the situation ended with the group of friends splitting up. They left, leaving her behind, and Debanhi had to try to get home on her own. Debanhi's friends managed to send her a trusted driver, someone who worked for the Didi ride-hailing platform. However, the specific ride in which he took Debanhi that night was arranged entirely outside of the app, which made things a bit more complicated for everyone involved. That's when the driver picked her up at around 4:20 in the morning on April 9th near Quinta Venecia in a Kia car. It was also during this ride that an argument broke out between the driver and Debanhi, which led him to leave her in the middle of the road. The location of this place is the Monterrey-Nuevo Laredo highway. As you can see, where she was left, there was a motel, the Nuevo Castilla, and also a transportation company. It's worth mentioning that although it was just another route, it wasn't the most deserted place she could have been left in. And she probably thought that getting closer to a more well-lit place would be the best option to ask for help and get back home. Now, if you've never been there, let's take a closer look at the place. It's a road that's not very well maintained and has a lot of greenery around it. With the help of the map, we can see that there are several houses and businesses nearby, but the area itself doesn't seem very welcoming. Certainly, if I were in that situation at night without any battery on my phone, the truth is I wouldn't know where to go. The first question we actually ask ourselves in this case, before knowing everything that happens afterward, is why she didn't go directly to the motel. Maybe she thought it was abandoned, maybe it looked too strange to her, so she first walked toward what would be the transportation company that was there. So she walked from the car to the transportation company called Alcosa Transportes Internacionales. She was then just meters away from the motel where she would later be found. The biggest problem is that in the early stages of the investigation, neither the motel nor the company Alcosa, according to Mario, the young woman's father, had provided all the security camera footage. And he said, the company Alcosa has not explained why some minutes of video, which are very important, disappeared as if by magic after my daughter walked to the company to ask for help. 2 videos that are facing forward. They have 8 cameras. It was clearly a bit strange that suddenly those cameras, or some of those cameras that were crucial to the case, weren't working. So at that time, we could only see how Debanhi seemed to enter the company but not leave. On the other hand, the owner of the motel is under investigation for providing false information in his initial statement, since the man claimed that the cameras at his motel did not keep a record of the footage and only transmitted live images. Well then, the information I'm giving you now is exactly what we're going to be correcting throughout the video, because this is what came out first, what we were piecing together with the little information we were being given and what Mario Debanhi's father knew and was telling us. There are things that, as the days went by and once we finally had the footage, we were able to piece together a bit more, because the reality is that during the first week after discovering where Debanhi's body was, we thought that something had happened to her in the transport company when in fact it wasn't there. Regarding the driver, another thing we learned through her father is that Juan David Cuellar, the man who was driving Debanhi that night, had actually harassed her. He had touched her breasts without her consent, and that was the reason she got out of the car. According to what was said, also very early on in the case, she started kicking everywhere inside the vehicle, started fighting, and he had to let her out. But let me explain that actually the evidence for this are the photos from the security camera footage of the place where they were at that moment, which are these right here. For now, I don't have the actual video, I only have the photos. Maybe it will come out by the time this video is edited, but I don't know. For now, this is the evidence that was available regarding him touching her. Supposedly, Mario, the young woman's father, saw the evidence in video format and he said that you could see how he touched her. These photos then show how the taxi driver moves his arm across Debanhi's chest area before she got out. Keep in mind that she was sitting in the seat next to the driver because according to him, she had started charging her phone from that seat. So honestly, you can't really see it. The quality isn't great, so we don't have good enough footage to determine exactly what happened. And once the interview with the driver was conducted, which we'll get to in a moment, he says that it wasn't like that and that at no point did he intend to touch her or do anything of the sort. According to his account of the event, he was simply trying to convince her to let him take her home or to stay somewhere safe, but Debanhi was speaking incoherently. According to the driver, Debanhi got in by herself and closed the door. At no point did he really know where he was supposed to take her, and for the rest of the night he would repeatedly try to ask her where to go. Then she asked the driver for a cable to charge her phone, and before he could say anything, other than yes to take the cable, she moved to the front seat without explanation. According to the driver, it wasn't necessary to do that in order to charge the phone. He said that Debanhi was complaining about her friends and that she said they were bad, that they hadn't wanted to take her. However, she never specified where they hadn't wanted to take her. In addition to that, during the ride, the driver recorded an audio message for a friend in which Debanhi could be heard talking in the back.
Give my parents the truth. My parents have always told me the truth. You need to give them the truth. What truth? That is the question.
He was released from the hospital last night. He no longer wanted me to take her and started getting physical. And I was doing everything I could to keep her from getting out, but I'm just letting you know so you can come get her because she's very aggressive.
On the way to her house, or wherever it was they were headed, she asked the taxi driver to let her out in the middle of what looked like a wooded area. But in the end, he told her no, that he couldn't leave her there. And they ended up going back to the house where he had first picked her up. Supposedly, Debanhi changed her mind again, asking to be taken to another party. It was during this part of the trip that she got out of the car, ending the ride right in the middle of the road to Laredo. And a few minutes later, after the argument in which she got out, he took the famous photo of her. On the other hand, he denied the accusations made by Debanhi's father, who claims that his daughter was sexually harassed in the car. He said no, that he had never done such a thing and that he would never be capable of it. After leaving Debanhi alone at that specific location, the driver claimed that he drove straight back to his own home, that is, After that trip, he went to his house, told his wife about the situation, briefly went to the bathroom, and after 10 minutes returned to the same place. Except this time he didn't see Debanhi. She was already gone. He also said that his car was searched, meaning it was thoroughly inspected by the authorities on a couple of different occasions, to see if there was any evidence of a struggle or any sign of a crime. He was also questioned about why he took a photo of her on the road, this photo that became very famous in this case, because it really wasn't clear why he would do such a thing. But Debanhi's friends said that the photo was taken so they would know that she had gotten out on her own and roughly where she was and what she was doing. Although, of course, there are those who doubt that the gesture was so innocent, or maybe it wasn't innocent, but he wanted to distance himself from whatever might happen to Debanhi later, fully aware that there was a possibility she could disappear. Mario Escobar says that this was the trigger for everything that followed, even if he isn't the one responsible for killing her. Up until a certain point, Juan David had been the last person to see Debanhi alive, and the truth is that if it's true that he touched her, if he had been a respectful and decent person, Debanhi probably would never have gotten out of the car and never would have run through the hotel at night. But again, all of this is debatable based on the interview that was conducted with this man. The driver and Debanhi's friends, all three of them, went to speak to the media to share their stories.
I had to take all three to their house.
Here, these are copies that we asked David to bring to see if we can show them with the camera. Screenshots of the conversation with her friends. Here they wrote to you, I see that at 3:29 in the morning it says, hi, hey, and you replied, hey, I'm nearby, right? You already knew them? There was already some familiarity?
No, I didn't know them. I only knew them from the trip, that's all.
All right, let's continue, but here already...
In addition to claiming Debanhi got out of the taxi because the driver harassed her by touching her chest, in another interview, Mario Escobar revealed new footage from authorities where his daughter argues with friends, one even pulls her hair. At another point, he noted that after exiting, she walks a few meters and calls someone. Now the father doesn't know what happened, whether she ran out of credit, her battery died, or if her friends simply didn't answer. But he suspects that something else happened between them and that they are not telling that part. Debanhi's friends recently gave an interview, almost at the same time as the taxi driver, in which they recount what happened that night and share their perspective on the situation, including how they met the man who was driving them. As expected in a case like this, Debanhi's friends were heavily criticized for leaving her alone in that place. And to make matters worse, they were also criticized when they didn't say anything about the case, when they didn't speak out about what had happened. So, at the end of April, this interview took place in which they clarified a few points. First of all, Sarai and Debanhi had known each other for about 2 months and by that time had gone out together 4 or 5 times. Whereas the other girl, Yvonne, had just met her that night. Yvonne and Sarai worked together. That's how they knew each other. That night, Debanhi sent a message to Sarai saying she wanted to go out and that she wanted to go to a party, not a club. So Sarai agreed and invited Yvonne. The party was 10 minutes from Debanhi's house, so she invited them to get ready at her place before going out. The girls arrived at the house at around 10:47 p.m. Debanhi actually had several different plans on her phone. A friend had sent them to her. With this information, they decided to head to what would be the first party of that night, which was just about 5 minutes away from there. They stayed at this place for about an hour and 40 minutes. After that time, Debanhi says she wants to leave the party and then gives the address of the new party they would go to Yvonne. That's when this girl orders the Didi and he comes to pick them up. This Didi driver would later be the one to drop Debanhi off near the motel. Once they arrived at the second location, the house where the party was supposed to be was empty. There was no one there and Debanhi's friend wasn't answering. So they decided to go to the last party of the night before the events happened. At this point, they were still with the Didi driver who had taken them in the first place, since he had made them feel comfortable and they wanted him to pick them up later if he was available. So at that moment, during the rides, they exchanged numbers with Yvonne. Then this man took them to the new location. When they arrived at the first quinta, they realized the party was ending. There outside the place, they met a group of guys and went with them to another party which was also at a quinta nearby. This quinta was the last one of the night, the last party they attended.
I would like to offer my condolences to her father and also to her mother, to the whole family for what happened. And then we met up with her. As I mentioned, she would go off in little groups, differently. She would separate from us. We only drank alcohol. The truth of the matter is she would frequently wander off to other locations, and we really have no way of knowing for certain whether she had ingested any other substances. When he suggested that we should go and get her, we were already on the verge of reaching our destination anyway. So we didn't have the means to go back again. Yeah, we didn't know. How could we get all the way over there? To go back for her, and I can't leave my house because
We're really not going out.
And for my mom to go out to work, honestly, it makes me terrified. I worry about her constantly, and she's even missed some days at work. Well, people don't know that, right? But my dad passed away a few months ago. So my mom is the one who supports my family, and people don't know that. And the honest fact that I constantly receive these threats makes me feel incredibly afraid, We really didn't want to speak out before because of that deep fear, so we decided to wait until right now to finally talk because it's just been far too much to handle.
A lot of things that really aren't true.
A whole lot of different things, even completely fabricated conversations come out. No, yeah. There had never been an unusual or bizarre situation where they acted like that, intoxicated or anything like that.
They say that by 4 a.m. in the morning, Debanhi had quietly gotten into the car by herself and had closed the door to leave. So they had no way to get back. And according to what they say, it was a pretty bad area. So someone offered to give them a ride and they accepted. They also say that Debanhi's mother was the one who was keeping an eye on things that night, but they didn't have her phone number. They barely had Debanhi's father's number because at some point they had met him when he drove Debanhi and one of the girls in his car. So they had no way to contact Debanhi's mother, especially since the father's phone was turned off. Debanhi's family started searching for her while the police did their job. Tried to do their job. Mario points out that they didn't do it well at all, although the reality could also be that they tried, but the killer's tracks were covered up perfectly. Up until that point, not much was known. 13 days after the disappearance, and after 4 different searches in the motel area, the young woman's body was found in a cistern on the property. This cistern was 4 meters tall and it had 90 centimeters of water, that is, less than a meter, about waist high for an average person. That's where the water was. This whole area of the hotel was actually abandoned, so the cistern was as well. It turns out that after these 13 days of disappearance, the motel workers reported a strong smell coming from that cistern, and when the police arrived, they found her. But it's at this point that the biggest mystery arises. If she had been there the whole time, how is it that they only just found her? On another note, she fell from a height of 4 meters into a bottom that had some water. But for Mario, this doesn't match the injuries her body showed. In other words, he doesn't think you could get so few injuries from that height. Her body should have had many more marks, but it didn't. After coming to terms with the fact that Debanhi would not return, a tribute was held for her at the university and people posted photos remembering her. Such was the case with Debanhi's best friend, who posted photos of them together on Instagram along with a message to commemorate their friendship. My heart is broken, life is so unfair, they took my best friend away from me. All I can say is that you taught me the true meaning of friendship. I will always remember you for the immense joy you radiated. God allowed me to be your friend for more than 10 years. We had so many plans together, but now all I have left are all the beautiful moments I got to share with you. I can't find the right words to express everything I'm feeling right now. Debanhi, I love you and I will love you all my life. Today you rest in heaven and become a little angel who will always be with me. Fly high, my girl. Someday we'll meet again in the kingdom of heaven. First of all, regarding the investigation, the state prosecutor said that the motel was only searched once and not 4 times as Debanhi's father claimed. However, this was later contradicted again, so it's hard to believe it was only searched once. What I mean is that they said this to justify not having found her earlier. According to forensic examinations, Debanhi Escobar died as a result of cranial trauma. In other words, she suffered a severe blow to the head, or someone inflicted it on her. The state prosecutor, Gustavo Adolfo Guerrero Gutierrez, determined that the young woman's lungs contained no water, so death by drowning was ruled out. After those initial forensic studies, the authorities are investigating whether the blow to the head was caused by the fall or if someone else inflicted it. But why didn't she have water in her lungs? According to the forensic coordinator, it was because after falling, she stood up. As I was saying, inside this place there were only 90 centimeters of water. It was easy to stand up, so she wouldn't have drowned because of that. After the first autopsy, Debanhi's family said they wanted to do another one to confirm that there had been no sexual abuse because they specifically thought that it might have happened. Also, as I mentioned, the body showed several injuries that could be consistent with this. But we had to be sure.
It was precisely for that reason, before giving my daughter a proper burial, I had another autopsy done.
The family found it quite strange that she could somehow fall from such a great height and only have a severe blow to the head. After the Nuevo León prosecutor's office confirmed that the body found in the motel's cistern was Debanhi's, Gustavo Adolfo Guerrero stated that the cause of death was a severe cranial contusion.
I am Gustavo Adolfo Guerrero Gutierrez, serving as the Attorney General for the state of Nuevo León. We wish to share with you some important information regarding the events that occurred yesterday. Following the discovery of a deceased person's body within the designated search area for the missing young woman, Debanhi Susana Escobar Basaldu, we must confirm that the body found is indeed that of Debanhi Susana. The official cause of death has been determined to be a severe and blunt cranial contusion.
It should be noted that a contusion is the damage sustained by a part of the body, in this case the head, due to a blow that does not cause an external wound. In other words, there was a strong blow to the head with a hard object. The Secretary of Security of Nuevo León, Aldo Fassi Suasua, criticized the massive human error for not finding the body during the previous 4 searches, and justified this delay by stating that there are always mistakes in the search for missing persons all over the world. He said unfortunately she was at the bottom of the water and there was nothing to see. Underwater the dogs cannot smell. And the reality is that there are some strange details with this part because, at least according to what I have studied so far, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the body sinks at first for 1 or 2 weeks. It does have water in the lungs after dying from drowning. However, this is not the case. As was said at the beginning, Debanhi did not have water in her lungs. Therefore, the most likely thing is that she would float during the first few days. Even worse is that the water was less than a meter deep. Because Debanhi's father couldn't understand why his daughter's body was found only on the 5th search and only after the workers mentioned the smell, he decided to take action and, on his own, ordered an autopsy. In an interview, he stated that the results did not match those from the Nuevo León prosecutor's office, saying, "On my part, I ordered another autopsy with an expert that I hired. I already have the results, but I can't reveal anything until I have the official document." What he did deny was that it was an accident, which is what the authorities had suggested. You are in a position inside a cistern that is 4.5 meters wide. Let society answer me. Would you only get a blow to the head after falling 4.5 meters, which is about the height of a 2-story house? The answer is no, so it doesn't make sense. He also said that he is willing to continue until he finds the truth. And without needing to exhume the body and perform another autopsy to clarify things, I am going to do it, and the authorities should do it too. Regarding the videos from the transportation company and the motel, Debanhi's father questioned the hotel because despite having the videos, they did not hand them over during the 4 searches conducted by the authorities, but only 2 days after his daughter's body was found. The worst part is that he can't believe that not a single employee saw the young woman enter the premises on the security cameras. He felt the same way about the transportation company for not having the complete videos, since some parts are missing. He also doubts what was said about a massive human error. He does not believe that his daughter's body was in the hotel's water tank for 13 days because the search teams gathered in the area every day and never noticed the smell of decomposition, nor did the dogs that assisted in the search. And he said, "We were there and we all would have smelled it. We were there handing out food." When did the body arrive? He means it can't be that overnight. While they weren't there, the workers suddenly smelled something so strong. How is it possible the smell didn't gradually increase and suddenly there was a smell of decomposition? Throughout all this time, a key point of discussion has been the security cameras, both from the street, the transport company, and the motel. The biggest problem is that the motel did not hand over the camera footage right away, claiming that they weren't working. which in these cases always seems rather convenient that the key cameras just happen to not be working. For a while, we knew Debanhi reached the door of the transport company, but we had no idea what happened after. Today we know a little more, and that bit is important. We see Debanhi go to the door, and it looks like she wants to knock, but then she moves where the camera can't catch her. This is where the new footage comes in. Rescued from the hotel and from the street. The first camera is installed at the entrance of the site. There you can see the young woman entering completely alone at around 5 in the morning. You see a woman enter with Debanhi's physical build and also wearing the clothes she had on that night. Debanhi continues her path to the motel's restaurant, which is abandoned. At this point, the second camera is located, which captures the moment when she looks into the restaurant through a glass door. This part is very important because before Debanhi was walking normally, but when she passes by the restaurant, you can see on the camera that she is running. So what is she running from, and what happened in that short stretch of the path that made her start running in complete darkness? It was said that you can see the young woman walking back and forth. Debanhi then goes around the restaurant and, without passing through the reception area, which is a bit further up, she arrives at the area of the cisterns. She stops at the intersection point between the motel wall and the restaurant. Next, she walks parallel and in the same direction as the 3 tanks that make up the water reservoir where she was found dead. So, we have the cameras that show us what happened. Right before her death. That small stretch we don't know about is what raises the most questions for us. That is precisely the big question. What happened to her to end up there? Whether she fell by accident or if there was someone else who ended up hitting her. We don't know exactly what time she fell. We don't know if it was at that moment. We don't know if someone else passed by there. We have no idea about anything because there are no cameras there. Or at least they haven't been made public, or the hotel is still keeping them. As of the moment I'm making this video, the authorities have more than 50 videos in their possession. The most recent footage we have from the cameras shows that almost at 6 in the morning, there are 2 people outside the abandoned restaurant at the motel. You can also see a car passing by. This happens 40 minutes after the last time Debanhi can be seen on camera walking toward the area of the cisterns. It is also confirmed that a total of 5 cars passed by on different cameras in the areas where Debanhi was that night. Over time, videos came to light in which you can see a kind of fight, an altercation between Debanhi and a group of people. So, what happened there? So far, it is not entirely clear. She first leaves the party venue, a young man chases after her, she hits him, and then more people arrive. We still don't know about the testimony of these people or exactly what happened at the party. According to Debanhi's friends, she was in a terrible state and was behaving very violently. They said that these guys were trying to calm her down, but obviously we see in other videos that she is walking quite normally. Let's say that her violent behavior is specifically directed at these people, and there, at that very moment, you can see what her father was talking about the friends pulling her hair. All of this, according to them, was to calm her down. Some people have been confused in recent weeks because the face of the driver who came forward to be interviewed was different from the one the media had shown at first. But the reality was that they were actually 2 different people. One is the driver from the night Debanhi disappeared, and the other is a driver who was suspected by the media when Debanhi was missing. But people considered him suspicious because at that time there were several families accusing this taxi driver of having harassed several women. The man turned out to be a well-known lawyer from San Luis Potosí, and the charges brought against him were related to substances. But he, who by the way led his own defense, was able to convince the control judge that his arrest had been illegal. In other words, yes, this man was involved in illegal activities, but that didn't mean he had anything to do with Debanhi's death. And it's not that they switched them or that there's some kind of strange maneuver regarding this case, but rather that they really were 2 completely different people being accused of completely different things. On the other hand, something that's being talked about now is Debanhi's cell phone, which was found in the water, but not where she was. In a press conference, the Nuevo León prosecutor's office stated that the cell phone was found in a different pit, which contained other objects such as a black garbage bag. According to the authorities, the cistern where Debanhi fell had 3 pits. Debanhi's body was found in one, but her cell phone was in another. The bag was found in the middle part of the pit, in an intermediate duct between the 2 chambers of the pit. The authorities added that at the bottom of the same pit, other belongings of Debanhi were also found, such as her keys and a handbag, which were later confirmed by her family to belong to her. It is still unknown what is inside, but work is being done to clarify what happened that night using her cell phone. Since the case came out, something has happened that I've seen occur more often in accusations against corrupt politicians, and not so much in murder cases. People made up a bunch of things without any evidence. But I'm talking about taking the names of people involved in various crimes and trying to drag this case into the mix. They were lies that made no sense at all. Something unbelievable formed around this case on the internet. People would take screenshots of internet posts without the name of whoever posted them, without sources, or even any idea how they got the information, whether a friend told them or what they did, and they simply started spreading false information everywhere. Rumors about whether cartels were involved or if Debanhi was an escort. There were literally entire posts defending this idea that Debanhi was an escort and that she had gone to the hotel to meet with mafia bosses, things like that. That her friends were escorts too, that she was killed for knowing something or other. Of course, you can never rule out the possibility of corruption being involved, but at this point, it was reaching a really strange level. The reality is that Debanhi had known one of the girls for a few months and had just met the other one that night. On top of that, there are cameras that show what she did almost the entire night. So many of these theories, so to speak, were falling apart. And more than theories, they were outright accusations. With that said, on April 23rd, news tragically broke, confirming that Debanhi had been sexually assaulted. This was also being widely circulated and repeated on social media. The news read something like this. The Federal Commissioner of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, or CID, Omar Tames, reported that there are inconsistencies in the investigation into the death of Debanhi Escobar, and therefore a second forensic examination will be conducted. Upon leaving the victim's wake, the family's legal representative revealed that Debanhi Escobar had indeed suffered sexual abuse. It doesn't directly confirm that there was sexual abuse, but most media outlets took it as if it did, as if it was a strong statement that this had happened. The main problem was that there was no second authority, there hadn't been a second autopsy up to that point, and on top of everything, Debanhi's body had been in the water long enough to make it difficult to trace evidence of sexual abuse. In fact, it made it difficult to trace evidence of many things. On April 23, 2022, the same day, the State Human Rights Commission of Nuevo León, the CDEH-NL, issued an alert to the public and to Debanhi Escobar's family regarding the alleged fraud. By the civil society organization identified as the International Human Rights Commission, which I mentioned earlier, Omar Tames, who claimed to be a federal commissioner of said commission, stated that he requested a second expert analysis from the State Attorney General's office. But the CID that Omar Tames was referring to was a civil association and does not have the authority to conduct investigations in this type of case. In other words, what he claimed was not true. Furthermore, the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, the CID, issued the following statement. In response to information in the Mexican media, the CID reports that it did not make any statement regarding the murder of the young woman Debanhi Escobar. This was posted on their verified Twitter profile. Another topic that was widely discussed was about the bodies that were found. A major news story was that while they were searching for Debanhi, they had discovered several other missing girls. And the real news was that they had all been found deceased. But let's look at the facts. So while searching for Debanhi, 5 missing teenage girls were found alive. Irlanda Ramirez, 14 years old, Ingrid Castillo, 15, Brisa Porras, 16, and Jennifer Almaguer, 15 years old. And Irma Hernandez, 19 years old. These are confirmed facts from Nuevo León. The biggest problem then came when false news started to spread claiming that the girls had been found dead. Whether they were eventually found alive or dead is not the primary issue at hand. What's truly crucial and worth highlighting is, how is it possible that the only way to find these girls is if there's a major high-profile case that exerts significant pressure on the authorities? Because if they were there to be found all along, whether alive or dead, why weren't they discovered much sooner than they actually were? Does it really take a massive case for the authorities to search and actually find them? Let's just say these discoveries make me think that in the end they weren't really looking for them. At this point, the Debanhi case is still missing several things, a lot of information that we still don't know or that contradicts what was initially seen. That's why we should review some of the inconsistencies that have come up so far. First of all, Debanhi's body. There was no water in her lungs, even though she was found floating in the cistern. No one detected her there until 13 days later, even though supposedly, and since it was considered an accident, the body had been there the entire time. Let me remind you again what her father said. They had been there almost from the beginning. They had spent many days searching the entire place and didn't find her until it was reported that there was a smell coming from the cistern after 2 full weeks. And one of the most important inconsistencies in this case comes with the recording cameras, with the security cameras that are around the area where Debanhi disappeared and later died. The hotel's recordings are a key piece of the case, and at first, the hotel owner himself had said that the cameras weren't recording, that there were no recordings from that night, nothing at all. And now we find out that there are recordings up until almost the very last moments of Debanhi's life, and right where she starts running and where it ends, where the cisterns are, there isn't not a single camera, not one camera, there's nothing. There are no witnesses, no cameras, no sound, there's nothing in that place. In one of the darkest places on the property, I should clarify, and one of the spots that I'd say is the easiest to get into from the side. Let's say if you wanted to install security cameras, you'd think it would be best to put them there where you can't see anything, where it's dark, where it's easy to climb over the fence. Right there, there's nothing. A bit strange. In recent days, regarding this case, a lot of news, rumors, and other things have come out. It's a case that undoubtedly has a lot of media coverage. As of today, a few weeks have already passed and there are still tons of news stories every day. One of those many news stories and rumors is about El Jaguar, who is suspected of being one of the perpetrators of the crime. Leaked chat messages came to light in which a person nicknamed El Jaguar is mentioned, who is believed to be one of the perpetrators of the crime. These chats are accompanied by a photo of this person. As days went by, El Jaguar himself appeared in the media, first and foremost through the popular app TikTok, to give his side of the story. His name is Gustavo Isidoro Sotomiranda, and he says he lives in Texas, United States. And in the videos, he says that he has nothing to do with Debanhi's murder, that his nickname is not El Jaguar, but rather they call him King Kong, and that he has evidence to prove his alibi, since on the day of the events he was in Texas, more specifically at a water park in the city of Corpus Christi. He also uploaded TikTok videos crying, where he says that his life and his family's life were ruined by being accused of femicide. In an interview, he said his name only surfaced because his half-brother owns Alcosa, the transportation company near where the body of Debanhi was found, the one we visited, which initially claimed there were no cameras, but that he has nothing to do with it, and also that he was never near the place, and that the only time he went there was 2 years ago when he went to look for his brother. Look, in any case, this didn't sit well with a lot of people, because regardless of whether he's guilty or not, he was heavily criticized. Because in several of the videos he posted, he seemed to take the case, or rather the situation, somewhat lightly. And at times, it even seemed like he was making fun of what happened to Debanhi. There's also debate about whether he's trying to take advantage of all the attention the case is getting to become a bit famous on TikTok, and that's why he posts those videos and commented on what happened. But anyway, we're not going to accuse him of anything either, I'm just telling you what happened. At the moment I'm recording this video, there are no other suspects apart from, well, the taxi driver and the friends. In other words, there isn't a third person who has been found yet, or at least not one they've mentioned publicly. Maybe as soon as I release this video, someone will come forward. But up until now, at this very moment, nothing. In new developments, things that have just happened in the case, right before rendering this video, Debanhi's identification was found. This Thursday morning at approximately 7:30, residents of the Constitucion condominiums alerted the local police that they had discovered an identification card in the complex gardens, which appeared to belong to Debanhi. So they took pictures of it, we can already see them online, and yes, it is clearly Debanhi's identification. This identification card is from the National Union of Education Workers, or SNTE, and it was officially issued just last year. Debanhi's father is a teacher who belongs to this union, which is the reason why she has that identification. But let's see, where exactly was it found? Because that's what's important. This is the thing that's most strange. In the news, and one of the most important points is also that this place had already been searched. Just like with the body, as happened now, this place had already been searched and only now do neighbors find the ID. Look at this image made by Infobay. It shows that the identification was found 24 kilometers away from the motel. That is to say, here are the Constitucion condominiums, and up there is the Nueva Castilla motel. Which is why, obviously, many people are commenting that there's something strange here, that it's clear from a great distance that the ID was placed there. Because one of the first things I thought when I first saw the news was, okay, she could have lost it at any time during the year, but what happens then? It's already been weeks since the case, and it would be kind of strange if, first of all, the ID was still there if she herself lost it in that spot, and it would be even stranger if, I don't know, it suddenly just flew to that place. So definitely somebody out there must have put it there. Otherwise, it would have been discovered by someone a long time ago. With all that said, let's finally move on to the theories about the case. The official version, so to speak, because in reality, supposedly, all lines of investigation are being followed, is that Debanhi fell into the cistern by accident. She had entered the hotel grounds, walked around the area, and then went to the part with the cisterns where she saw that one of them was open. At first glance, considering what we've been shown on the cameras, one could say that this is the truth, that she simply fell. But there are a lot of coincidences together which, while they could just be that, coincidences, they could also indicate that a crime was committed. Let's just say that a lot of bad things happened all at once that same night. It was all very strange, the whole night was really weird, and so it's a bit questionable that it ended like this, that it ended in an accident where she simply stepped into an empty space and fell. How could that happen? It absolutely can happen, but again, in the end, it's very strange. Also, in reality, we have to consider how she hit herself, how it's possible that she hit her head hard enough to die, and on top of that, fell but remained standing so as not to breathe in water while she was dying. At what moment did she die? At what point did she die if it wasn't during the fall? Because she was standing, there were hours before she died. There are many things that still remain unresolved regarding her death. The next theory has to do with a psychotic episode. It's not news that when consuming certain substances, a person may experience psychosis. This usually happens to people who have a family member with schizophrenia, meaning it doesn't happen to just anyone. Even so, many people don't know this, they don't take into account that this can happen, and when consuming certain psychedelics, a psychotic episode begins, which could be what happened to Debanhi. As we saw before, she behaved strangely for a good part of the night she died. First, fighting with her friends, not letting anyone hold her, pushing everyone away, then saying nonsensical things to the Didi driver. Many people wonder what truth she was talking about, according to what the driver said, and then running through the motel grounds where we can't see anyone behind her. This last part struck me as strange, since she was walking calmly down the street, maybe a bit fast but she wasn't running, and suddenly, passing the abandoned restaurant, she starts to run. I should clarify that the place looks scary, and she may have run into someone, or it is possible she imagined a pursuer. This could have led her into the property's darkest areas, falling through the floor. The biggest problem with this is that, given the body's condition, a toxicology test could not be performed. Still, a psychotic episode doesn't rule out that she was assaulted. Both things could have easily happened given the place where she was found. I also thought about the common tactic of drugging someone to kidnap them. Maybe it was a combination. They gave her something and didn't expect that reaction. According to Debanhi's friends, she was going back and forth, meeting people at the party, talking to others, and going to the bathroom all the time. So they weren't seeing everything that was happening to her. And when they were about to leave, since they had to go back because they were working that day, they saw that there was a group of guys who wanted to take Debanhi, who was already in pretty bad shape. This group told her friends that she looked really bad and that they would take her home. The The friends didn't know them, and obviously they didn't let them take her. So, are you following who this group of guys is? I don't know. I haven't found any news yet, but it's a real possibility. It's happened before. People drugging girls to make them sleep and taking them away. In this case, the opposite happened, which is why I mentioned a psychotic episode. Maybe she took something that affected her badly. Some substances make a person act as if they had drunk a lot, which is how her friends described her. So, does this seem like a good possibility to you? Let's say there are two ways to look at this. The first possibility is she may have taken a hallucinogen that had harmful effects on her mental health. This is something that would be clearer if she or her family had a history of psychosis. And the second possibility is that someone could have given her a substance that made her feel drunk. Maybe at that moment something happened that made her distrust her surroundings, and the rest is history. This last one is what I'm referring to when I talk about the group of men who wanted to take her to their house. And so we move on to the last theory, and the one that many people believe. Beyond how she got to that point, to the point where she was off camera at the motel, the theory is that someone found her along the way. That a person, probably an opportunistic killer, found her. Maybe he abused her and then either threw her into the hole or kept her with him for a few days. We can go a little further and say that someone like that would have to be an employee of the motel or another nearby business. In fact, maybe someone saw her and started following her. That's why she might have started running at that moment. But someone who knows the area would know where to go to catch her. That's exactly why I say that if that happened, it has to be someone who works at the hotel, someone who knows the place, because otherwise it wouldn't be very likely. This is especially significant because in the footage that was at least shown, there's absolutely no one else around. Recently, a brand new theory has emerged, one more to add to the list here, and it specifically concerns the possibility of a stalker from Debanhi University. This 34-year-old man allegedly stalked her and then followed her to the party where... Now, I have a lot of doubts about this theory, mainly because of the source of these details. This comes from the channel Oxlack Investigador. He made a video with an alleged friend of Debanhi, or a classmate from university, and interviewed him by phone to gather more details. He didn't mention, however, whether this man gave statements to the Nuevo León prosecutor's office or not. And then he said, well, Debanhi, it was that same guy who had been harassing her. He saw his opportunity, thought it would be an easy target, and perhaps he drugged her, took her away to a quiet place, and then committed his act. This anonymous person implies that Debanhi had a stalker at the university she attended, a 34-year-old man who had also been at the same party as Debanhi that night when she died. This young man who was speaking says that the stalker could have planned everything that happened. He also mentions that after the young woman disappeared on April 9th, he dropped out of the university. This is why he suspects that the 34-year-old man is responsible for Debanhi's femicide. Obviously, the most questionable part is that this comes from an anonymous person, although it may be that he preferred to do it this way for his own safety and because he believes the stalker could be a dangerous person. But the most important thing is that this anonymous classmate says that the stalker resembles one of the men Debanhi was seen moving away from on security cameras. And if what he says is true, then Debanhi's friends would be lying. Even so, the biggest question I have about this is, what does the DD driver have to do with it? Because in this hypothesis, there would have to be some connection between him and Debanhi's friends or the stalker. She was dropped off at this place near the hotel. How could the attacker have known she would be there?